Next part, I'd like to invite Viman Krishnan. He is going to speak to us today about how to make the best use of a bad bargain. Has anyone had that experience before? Have you had like what you thought was a good bargain, but then you realized it wasn't? Someone has that experience? Yeah? Yeah, so he's actually going to talk to us about how to make the best use of a bad bargain, and you'll be quite surprised what bargain he's referring to. So a little bit about him. He's an urban monk, so he's been leading a monastic lifestyle for about 2 decades now. And he has a background in contextual and philosophical studies. He travels a lot, sharing the knowledge of yoga with wisdom, and he likes to write and share his realizations of his journey, of his spiritual journey with others. So let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Hands up, this is your first time? Oh, welcome. You're all familiar with yoga, somewhat yoga knowledge. We're going to go into a philosophical discourse into the depths of yoga knowledge, because yoga goes beyond stretching and breathing. It goes beyond the physical, the psychological, and deals with our core being, our aspect, who we truly are. So tonight I'd like to give you the best bang for your buck, so to speak. Not in the sense that good deals in terms of with your money or with your financial resources, but the best deal with your ultimate resource, this human body, this human form of life. How do I get the best bargain out of my human body? Human resource is the most important resource. It makes up institutions, societies, nations, makes up the world. So how do I make use of this human body so I get the best deal? Because no one likes a bad bargain, like Wanja was just explaining. And everyone has had some experience of bad bargains. Yes, maybe. Sometimes we get given a present from a dear one, or someone close to us, a friend or a family member, they give us a present. What am I supposed to do with this thing? Have you had that experience? Or worse yet, you actually paid for that bad bargain. You used your own money, your hard work, time and energy and resource to go out and buy something, and it didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to be. I remember when the first franchise of the Warehouse came out back in the early 90s, where everyone gets a bargain. Is that the jingle? Is that still the jingle? Yeah. Does everyone get a bargain in the Warehouse? Yeah? For a little bit? Sometimes you buy that thing, you purchase it, and it's like, oh, it's good for the moment. But what happens to it in due course of time? Oh, God, what a waste of money. So no one likes to be ripped off. No one likes to be taken advantage of in this way. So similarly with our most important resource, this human body, how do I get the best bargain out of its use? How do I use it so I get the best deal? No one wants to get ripped off. Just like any consumable goods that you purchase, you've acquired this material body. And how do we, you remember as a kid, you come into this world, you're screaming and you're crying, and you have these, what is this? Long things, hard things, hairy things, pointy things. You're kind of figuring out, what do you do with these things? As a child, you might have grabbed things and put it in your mouth. Anything, you just put it in your mouth, right? Trying to figure out what to do with your mouth, trying to figure out what to do with your hands, with your legs, with your head, with your body. And you're left to figure out how to function with this body At best, someone will tell you how to use your body in such a way so you get the best deal, your mom or your dad, if you grew up with two parents, which is rare these days. In any case, you may have heard from someone or something how to utilize the body in such a way that you get some good benefit. But generally speaking, when you get or you purchase a consumable goods, it comes with an instruction manual, yeah? Like when you buy a food processor, and we go through a hell of a lot of food processors here, right? Because no one just bothers to read the instruction manual of how to utilize the piece of equipment. When you buy a car, generally speaking, you need some qualification to use the automobile. Figure it out like that. But whoever gave us the instruction how to use this human machine, this material body? At best, we had to figure it out ourselves. And we spent our whole life figuring it out. What do I do with these hands, these legs, this brain, this nose, these eyes? And you see others doing things with their body, which is a bag of senses, by the way. This is another way you can look at your body according to the yoga perspective. Your body is a bag of senses. And your whole life, you're seeking all kinds of sensations. You want your eyes to have good sensations, your touch to have good sensations, your tongue to have good sensations, the taste to have good sensations. And your whole life, you're just engaged in looking for the ultimate sensation, working hard in this way. Yes? But in reality, what happens like any consumable good? At some point, like any material goods, this body breaks apart. At some point, according to the yoga knowledge, it's going to bring us a little bit of an existential crisis. It's going to be the cause of our misery, especially when we become really attached to all our different sensations. You can look at it in this way. You can even consider your body as a bag of misery, masquerading as a pleasure machine in the making. Look at it like that. A bag of misery masquerading as a pleasure machine in the making. What do I mean by that? You've acquired this body and you have hopes and dreams to make it the ultimate pleasure machine, right? Because what's the use of having your material body without any pleasure, without any good sensations? So it's a pleasure machine in the making, in the sense that, yes, you know, you're always adding things, supplementing things to your body. So right now at the moment, I'm going to get bigger muscles. I used to do weights once, a long time ago. You know, by getting bigger muscles, I'm going to get better sensation in one way, form, shape, or other, with other bodies, perhaps, if I'm really lucky. Or maybe with my body, I'll add a few decorations, some tattoos, like that. Put some clothes, different kind of clothes on my body, some shoes on my feet, some new hairstyles, like this. So in this way, the body is like a pleasure machine in the making. You're always adjusting, conforming, and twisting, and turning, and trying to make the body the ultimate pleasure machine. That's an interesting way of looking at your body. But at some point, just like any consumable goods, what happens? Like you buy that piece of junk from the $2 shop or the warehouse, whatever. At some point, sooner or later, at some point, that consumable good, just like this body, starts to kind of like lose its finesse. We don't want to admit it, because no one wants to admit these things, but it's just the reality of the material body. And this thing has been dawning on me very starkly recently. I got into this monastic lifestyle, this way of living when I was 18, 19 years old. That was 20 years ago. It gives you an indication of how ancient I am. I'm an old person. And I have to come to realize and come to terms with myself, oh my God, I'm not, you know, I don't have the same look the way as I normally look. You know, I've got a big bald patch here. I don't have to, you know, shave my head like I used to in my early 20s. I don't kind of resonate like I used to resonate in my early 20s. You know, I've got to wear glasses more. Recently, the past 5 years, I've had to wear glasses. And I'm thinking, wow, yeah, it's just like the sensations, they're dissipating. And I got this even more stark realization hanging out with my 80-year-old grandfather. Dementia, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, he's got tremors. It's a very painful situation, miserable situation, because he's spent his whole life working so hard to maintain his material body and those who are related to this material body. And what has he got for it? Just this big pile of thing that's disintegrating. And I feel so sad for him. All the sensations that he used to really get into and love, it's just like he can't even remember. The most near and dear person next to him, which is his wife, he can't even hardly remember that. So is this material body a really good bargain, or is it a bad bargain? It depends how you look at it. The yoga knowledge explains that at some point in these material bodies, you're going to come to an existential crisis with it, and that you're going to experience a little bit of misery from time to time, a little bit of suffering. So we're going to logically deduce this experience of this existential crisis. Every time when we experience a little bit of suffering in this world, according to yoga knowledge, means that there's something that we're doing that's not natural. There's something that we're doing that's not right, some wrong action. And if you logically look at it, all the things that brought you some suffering in this world is because you acted in the wrong way, isn't it? You acted in an unnatural way. Maybe you had too much to drink, and then the next morning you were like, oh, you had too much to eat. You know, human body's not meant to eat so much. You know, your stomach is scientifically this big. You can only stretch so much, and then you feel like you're gonna vomit it all out or something like that. If you do something unnatural, you act in the wrong way, then you have to suffer the consequences. So this is what we learn from any experience of, any detrimental experience that we have with these material bodies, is that perhaps there's something I'm doing that's wrong. And guess what? We all have to act in this world. We all have to do something. So how we act in this world will be fundamentally dependent on who we think we are. Getting a little philosophical, right? How we act in this world is dependent on who we think we are. Our identity. If I think I am this material body, then yes, I will go about with my material engagements. So at some point, this suffering or misery should lead us all to the question of, who am I in the first place? Because according to my identity, I will act accordingly to that and function to that. So how do I find out my identity? You have to find out what are your qualities. Your qualities will say how you function, and how you function will say will actually tell you who your identity is. For example, if you have the feminine qualities, means your identity is of a woman. If you have masculine qualities, then you identify as a man, and you do man things, and the woman does woman things. And you can extend that. If you have the qualities of a businessman, so you identify as a businessman and you do businessman things. If you have the qualities of an engineer, so you function and do engineering things, and you identify as an engineer. Does that make sense? We're getting really kind of logical, philosophical here. Get you all thinking. If you identify, if your qualities are that of an astronaut, you do astronaut things and go to outer space, so that's your identity. That's how you function. You're an astronaut. So yoga knowledge compensates for these things, that in order to be happy, even in these material bodies, you have to understand your nature. Because if a man wants to be a woman, it's not natural. Well, it has some difficulties. Or the woman wants to become a man, there's some difficulties because it doesn't have faculties or the functionality. Of course, you can do that these days with modern technology, but I'm just trying to make a point. That even to be happy in your material body, you have to understand what we call your psychophysical nature. You have to understand how your qualities are and how you function. And some people just function really naturally as a musician or artist like that with their hands. Some people function naturally as agriculturalists, farmers, businessmen, and that's just how they're hardwired to function. Some people have qualities of administration and management, so therefore they identify as a manager or an administrator. Some people function or have the qualities of a philosopher or a teacher or a scientist, and they identify with that and they do scientist things, and their activities are revolved around that. So the problem is, even if you're really, really in touch with your psychophysical nature, which by the way is not so much taken into consideration these days, at least in modern education, where people are generally taught how to make money. From what I've seen, people who are engaged in working, it's all about what makes the most money, as opposed to what I'm good at in terms of what I'm naturally capable of doing. I hear and meet people and they say things, yeah, well, I'd rather be doing this with my life, with my human body, but hey, this is making the money. Or I'd rather be doing that with my life, but hey, I've got to make money. So sometimes people have to compromise their natural propensities just for the sake of making money. And because it's not natural for them, it's not, their psychophysical nature to do so in such ways, then they also have to experience some stress, some distress like that, because it's not natural. But let's consider that you're really in tune with your psychophysical nature and you really know who you are in terms of your body and mind. And you're just naturally a teacher or an engineer or a manager. Still, we have to understand that these are all temporary things. The engineer, the teacher, the lawyer, the accountant, it all ends with the body. And the yoga text, the prime yoga text, the Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter, which is technically called Sankhya Yoga, which is the analytical study of this material world by which you can understand your core nature, your core identity, not just the identity of the body and mind, but beyond the body and the mind. Krishna is trying, in the first, up to about the 30 texts of the second chapter, he uses this kind of deductive logic to understand who we truly are, the real qualities of life. Because you might think, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with living life like mine? I'm naturally an accountant or a teacher or a musician. And what's wrong with that anyway? Isn't it part of life to just get old and dwindle and disappear? At least I lived a natural life in relation to my body and mind. But we'll leave that thought for a moment. In order to understand what is actually our core identity, we need to understand what are some of the universal qualities of life itself. What are some of the universal qualities of life, irrespective of what body you're wearing? This will in turn point us to a direction about our real identity beyond the body and the mind. So what are some of the universal qualities of life? According to the yoga knowledge, we all want to live, isn't it? We all want to live. Does anyone here want to die? At least not yet. No one wants to die, right? No, good. Everyone wants to live. And even if you meet someone who was really wanting to take their own life, it was like really suicidal, which is unfortunately a big thing in this country, especially for young people. And you go to that person and say, look, I'm going to be able to solve all the problems of your life. If you just hear me out, I can solve all the problems in your life. That person would think twice, because naturally we want to live. We don't want to live decrepit and debilitated and destroyed. We want to live youthful, youthful and happy lives, long lives, if we can. That's why the cosmetic industry is such a big thing. The beauty industry is such a big thing. I've never seen such a huge increase in, what do you call those shops that do your nails and things like that? Those salons, there's been so many of those the past 5 years. You want to look young and beautiful as long as you can. You want to live. That's one of the first universal qualities of life. You want to live. Second universal quality is that you want knowledge. You're a very curious living entity. You want to understand things. You want to know things. You want to grasp things. That's why there's so many institutions of learning, philosophy, tertiary institutions, universities, schools of learning. You want knowledge because instinctively, you understand that ignorance is not bliss, not by a long shot. Out of ignorance, like I was when I was a toddler, I was thinking that it was a very good idea to stick forks into power plants. It's not bliss. Ignorance is not bliss, not by a long shot. So you want knowledge for the purpose of accessing, which is the third universal quality of life, which is happiness. You're hoping that by gaining knowledge, you're actually gonna access some pleasure, some happiness. Because what's the point to living your life without being happy? You see this in all advertisement. You see any advertisements saying if you buy this consumable good, you're going to be miserable? No. If you go to Fiji, you'll be miserable. Travel to Rome and you'll be happy and you'll be depressed. Yeah. Go to Thailand and you're gonna, commit suicide. No. No, of course not. Advertisement doesn't work like that. They promise you, you go there, you get this. And when you get that, you're gonna be blissed out. You're gonna be happy. Woo! And furthermore, you might even get that opposite sex next to the cigarette that you buy, or the vehicle that you get. They promise all these things. Why? Because instinctively you want happiness. Then yoga knowledge, this is known as Satchit Ananda. We want to live, we want knowledge, and we want bliss. Another quality, universal quality of life is that we want relationships. Everything has relationships. The bugs, the plants, the aquatics, the birds, the beasts, all the animals, the human beings, we all have this amazing relationships. Because ultimately the greatest pleasure is in relationships because we can experience love. And how do we express love? All life is serving. You're serving your partner, the partner serving you, you're serving your children, the children serving you, the family serving the nation, serving the capitalist are serving the family, families are serving the politician, and the politicians, implementing their manifesto to try and serve you all better, right? So in this way, these are some essential, fundamental qualities of life. You want to live, you want knowledge, you want bliss, you want relationship, you want love, and you want to serve. Now, if you examine these qualities in depth, they are completely antithetic to the qualities of dead matter. You take anything material, like this microphone stand, it doesn't have the will to live. It doesn't have the will to struggle for existence. It's dead matter. I can throw it in a big fire and it won't protest. Now, if I take any of you, yeah, isn't it? If I take you and I want to throw you out the window, what would you say? You punch me in the nose. Yeah. Exactly. Of course, you protest. What are you trying? Flush me down the toilet, throw me out the window. No, you want to live. I want to live. You'll see any creature, like even an ant, you put your finger there, it walks around your finger. You put your finger there, it walks over your finger. It has this want to struggle to live. But matter doesn't have that quality. I can chuck this in the fire and won't protest. Matter doesn't want any knowledge. It's just dull and innate. It doesn't have, it's just ignorant. It doesn't look for knowledge. You don't see any bits of wood looking at going to the university or something like that, getting degrees, you know, right? Matter doesn't want to be happy. You know, I can punch this microphone. It won't say, you know, it won't feel sad. Like, it doesn't have relationships. It can't have any emotions. It doesn't serve like we serve. So if you study logically, deducing things in this way, that the qualities of life itself are completely opposed, completely antithetic to the qualities of matter. So if the qualities of life are different from the qualities of matter, what does that mean? It means that we have to function something more than just a material. Whoa, this is the first lesson Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, you have to function on a platform beyond than just your material body, because that's not your natural, ultimately, that's not your natural position. Your qualities all point out to something beyond matter, non-material. So you have to function in the non-material platform. So we can understand things like this, just philosophically like this, how we're actually different from the body. So just like the body has its, the material body and mind has its psychophysical nature, the material nature. So similarly, the non-material unit of consciousness known as the spirit soul also has its own specific nature, non-material nature. If we understand those qualities, we'll want to function in a non-material way. That is the art and science of bhakti, bhakti yoga, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna. How to function in the non-material platform. If you function in the non-material platform, then you'll begin to understand what is core satisfaction beyond then just satisfying your temporary material body and mind. So yoga culture, which is technically called in the yoga text, is called Varnashram Dharma. It's the scientific way of organizing society. It's a sociological way of organizing people according to their natural state of existence, be it both material and spiritual. The Varna aspect talks about how we should work in these bodies and minds according to our natural propensities. As a scientist, as a farmer, as an agriculturalist, as a teacher, as an artist, as a musician. And if you do that, guess what? You'll be happy in these bodies. So that was the Varna aspect. The ashram refers to the dwelling or the shelter to accommodate the different phases of life. The student life, the household life, the retired life, and ultimately the renounced life. So people would have these different phases. And ultimately for the purpose of understanding Dharma, Varna Ashram Dharma, which is understanding our essential nature. I always wanted to figure out how to present this in such a way that was digestible and made sense, because it's such an important topic in yoga culture. Yoga culture is all about functioning in our natural way, be it both material and spiritual. Because if we don't function in our natural capacity, then that is, according to yoga knowledge, is the cause of all our suffering and distress, isn't it? If you do something unnatural, even just materially speaking, you can't do it long term. Like I've seen people work in, like myself, I had to work in New World as a young guy, and I hated it. And guess why I did it? Yes. Can anyone guess? Money. Yeah, exactly. I was getting up 2 o'clock in the morning, going to the bakery, throwing the flour in the water, mixing the dough, and by the time 3 o'clock, I was finished, just so I can get a little bit of money. But it was so unnatural. It was like, oh my God, when am I gonna die? This is just too much. I did that for 3 years. 14, 15, 16, no, 15, 16, 17 years old. And then I got to change a job when I was 18. I got my barman's license. So then I upgraded. I worked in a 4-class hotel in Wellington called the Quality Inn. And I thought I would really love that job, but it turned out it wasn't for me. I had to clean up vomit, call the police, sometimes get the bouncers to get people out of the place. It's just like such an intense job, And if you don't, and by the way, people are really particular of how they want their cocktails. Super particular. If you get the little bit of the measurements wrong, like I want my money back. Especially the ones from overseas. But yeah, it was a really excruciating experience, So I tried this, I tried that as you get this body and you're trying to figure out what to do with these bodies. I tried to be a skater, I tried to be a metalhead, I tried to be a punk rock guy, you're just trying to figure out, what do I do with this body, man? Just trying to get some ultimate sensations with the body, So we find out that at some point that we need to find out, just in the material platform, we need to find out what's natural for the body and the mind. And for some of us, it's to be a monk. For some of us, it's to have a family. For some of us, it's to be a businessman. We have to find that what is natural for us, even just materially speaking. But beyond the material, we ultimately have to come to terms and understanding what's natural for us in terms of our non-material identity, our core identity, this non-material units of consciousness, not just the spirit. So if you want the best bang for your buck in terms of how do you get the best deal for this material bodies, according to the yoga knowledge, this human form of body, we use it in such a way so that ultimately we can come to understand what is our true identity, our non-material identity. Whatever we're natural doing in these bodies, materially speaking, we work in such a way so that we can understand and rediscover, realize ourselves beyond our material identity. So it's all about being natural. If you want to have a more satisfied, wholesome, organic, blissed out lifestyle, yoga knowledge, the yoga philosophy is all about coming back down to earth, coming back to understanding your natural state of existence, both materially and spiritually. Okay, perhaps someone would like to ask a question. So,
how did you know you wanted to be a monk?
How did I know?
How did it manifest in your life that you just wanted to be a celibate monk?
I never imagined I was going to be a monk. You know what? To be honest with you, it was the last thing I ever dreamt of in my whole life. I had, if you knew who I was as a teenager, I had dreams for corporate world, study, 7 years studying. I ended up doing 3. I had all these other plans, and the last thing I wanted to do was to become a monk. But when we associate with persons with higher intentions in life, it kind of rubs off on us. And of course, I was very much interested in philosophy. So I put to practice this yoga knowledge. And the natural recourse of that was that the false ego was just being dissipated, you know. All the things that I thought that I was, all the pretenses that we thought we were, it was just vanishing. And then I came to realize, well, actually, this is my natural position. I'm kind of comfortable like this. I'm kind of happy like that. So sometimes it requires a lot of good association. Actually, it requires a lot of good association. And it also requires spiritual technology. Because as we grow up in this world, there's so many external influences about being or pretending something that we're not, you know? You gotta be like your mom, you know, my mom, she was like, actually, I did not say it too loud because this is online, isn't it? Oh gosh. Yeah, so, you know, sometimes your parents, you know, they you know, they really bolster you, you know, you're going to be for corporation and company. And when I told her, hey, no, I think I want to be a monk for a couple of years and see what happens, you know, like she cried. So we have all these external influences trying to make us something according to their vision, according to their perspective, how we should live our lives. But at some point, you're all going to have to understand how you should live your own life. And that requires a lot of good association, some spiritual technology, to sometimes the word purify our state of consciousness so we can come to understand what's really natural for us. And it can take some time. It took me a few years to figure out what I should really do with my life. And that's fine. Does that answer your question?
I was talking more about the catalyst that took place for you to go, I want to change from the environment to a spiritual mind. How did you go with that?
If you come out, if you hang out here more, then you'll understand what I mean. Anything else? Yes.
Would you ever like go back and tell yourself to go to university or like pursue the societal norm instead of the monk pathway?
Well, this pathway is replete with so much opportunities for learning and understanding some of the most comprehensive frameworks of knowledge regarding your non-material self and how this whole world revolves around you. So, short answer to your question, if it was beneficial for my self-realization, it was beneficial for my enlightenment, then yes, I would go and do it. But at this stage, no. Because there's so much information out there, there's so much knowledge out there which you can grasp with your human intelligence. And monk, you know what, in a real human civilization, there weren't lots of monks, actually. There were specialists in non-material pleasure. In a real human civilization, there was a section of people in society that was dedicated to just trying to uplift the consciousness of people, not just develop the economy and make money. And that was actually value. Because if you look around you, in spite of all our technological and economical advancement, there's a pinprick in education in the sense that people are not happy, realistically. I mean, if you look at objectively, there's so many problems in the internal state of the individual. So therefore, I came to the conclusion that actually this was the greatest education. People needed to understand what is core satisfaction. And it goes beyond just satisfying the sensations of the bodily demands. It goes to going deeper than that and understanding what is the qualities of the soul, what is the qualities of my non-material unit of consciousness known as the soul, and how to function in that platform. Because we already discussed, we're completely antithetic from the qualities of matter. So if we just pursue a material life, then at some point you will come to an existential crisis, and when that crisis comes, then you're ready. Hopefully you don't have to go through a crisis, but most people do. That's what Arjuna's situation was in the Bhagavad Gita. He went through a crisis. Oh my God, what do I do with my life? And then he was ready to hear this most profound knowledge that Krishna is teaching in the Bhagavad Gita. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense, but sometimes I can get quite philosophical, but that's also part of yoga. This is yoga for your intelligence, because without philosophy, sometimes life can have no substance. So we want a substantial, meaningful life, a purposeful life. All right, thank you very much.